Well, even if we wanted to run away from the fact that, it's the political season, our breaks, our commercial breaks wouldn't let us be, would they? Anyways, welcome back. We are turning our attention right now more into politics. We've been talking about leadership, and now we're going to be talking about why it will seem that we're only resting heavily on one leg when you talk about gender, and that is the male gender. Why is it that we're yet to fully utilize and the other leg, which could be just as strong? That's talking about women in leadership positions, women in politics. Why has it been very difficult to get more women into politics? And do we have any hope on the horizon for women who have been able to throw their hat into the ring? This morning, I'm with somebody who should know about this. She has campaigned heavily for more women to participate in politics and is asking more people to join, especially more women, to join the political bandwagon. Mrs. Eneobi is the convener, Nigeria Civil Situation Room, and also the country director of Action Aid. Ma'am, Merry Christmas to you, and welcome to the program.
Merry Christmas to you all too. Thank you for having me.
And we also have joining us via Zoom from Jos, all the way from Jos, Professor Fumi Paramalam, who is the Director of Studies at the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies in Kuru. She's also Professor of Gender and Development Studies at NIPS and Development Consultant and Women's Rights Activist. Ma'am, Merry Christmas to you and welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Hi, Ene.
Oh, very unsure if she can hear me.
I can hear you. I can hear you. I said Merry Christmas and thank you very much for having me on.
Great to know that she can, but I'm struggling to hear her quite a bit, so we'll see how we can work on that. Anyways, Ma'am, this is where we are. It's Christmas. I'm sure yesterday a lot of women were doing their thing in the kitchen. That's what we do, even though you will come the following day and, look as pretty as you do right now. But we're talking about politics, and it's the season of politics. You have been also taking this very personally and asking more women to get into politics. Some people say it's a bit late now because the tickets have already been given or taken, as the case might be. Are you impressed with the number of women you see on the tickets of political parties?
Thank you very much, and Merry Christmas to all Nigerians. And thank you for having me at this time. Compliments of the season.
Same to you.
When you look at the number of the women at the ticket, it's just a little over 1,000 out of over 10,000 contestants. And so we cannot say that we are satisfied. But I think we need to look at it. Are women participating in politics, in the political process? If you look at the majority of the voters, it is women and girls. And when you look at the turnout,
do we have that as a fact now?
Yes, we do. Even in registration, you have more than 50% as women. And when you talk of the young people, you have over 60%. And so when you are looking at the number of those participating in the process, in terms of contesting or being candidates, you can look at a very few women, but are they in the process? And what we are saying is, all along, you've been having women leaders some of them have suffered, issues of violence against women. When they see a woman coming up very strong, they feel threatened, and so a lot of things get to happen. But when you are counting those who are really in the process, if you want to divide and rule, if they want to mobilize, if you go back to look at what happened during Christmas, most of those who are being, the politicians are getting access, are trying to have access to, is women. Because they come with food items, they come with a lot of things, and when you are bribing a woman, you are bribing humanity. And when you're having less women in the decision-making room, what are you really telling women? What are you telling the people? We have a National Assembly that is male assembly. It's a male assembly. We have the House of Representatives. It's male-dominated. Only about 11 or how many do we have? About 12 women to 300. And, when you're looking at 360 and you're looking at 8 in 109 in the Senate, You don't have the voices of women there. Are you telling Nigerians that women's voices are not supposed to be there? We have a number of houses of assembly where there are no women, and you have women committees. Who is supposed to be deciding? You don't wear the shoes, so you don't know what it is to be a woman. And so I think a lot of work has been done in terms of women participation, but we need to do a lot more. We need to change the strategy in terms of looking at women inclusion. Even when the bills came, they were thrown out as if, what are the women talking about? But I think we need to look at the numbers again. We need to look at it. The battle for 2023 for women, I would say, is lost. But it's not lost completely. There are some women out there who are contesting, and we're asking Nigerians to vote for them. And we're asking all women to mobilize around them and vote for them so that we can, at least at their own level, change the status quo. Maintaining that, but the work for 2027 should start. So that if we want to vote, if we want to have half of the candidates as governors, we encourage all women politicians to go out there and contest for the elections. And those who are not able to contest, some of us who are not going for the elected positions should find the women who are going for it and back them up so that we can raise the status quo. But they are still in the process. Women are the ones who majority of them will be the ones to vote on that day. And so they are in the process. And I think paying lip service to the issues of women representation is really tiring and sometimes frustrating, I can tell you. Yeah. But because when you have the home, like you said, from the beginning of the program, you say women are doing their own thing with the festive season, whether it is the Christmas season or whether it is Salah season, you find out that in all of the seasons, because we worry about humanity, you want everybody to be fed, you want every child, to turn around good, and so we are talking of humanity here. Women's rights are human rights, because when they are not on the table, who takes those decisions? When there is unemployment, the children at home, they don't bother their fathers. They come back to their mother. And you watch your children helplessly. We're educating a lot and they're not having jobs. So we are talking of democracy that has the inclusion of not just women, but also persons with disability, and also young people and old people, having a generational transition, and also inclusion in decision-making.
Let me take this to Professor Paramalam now, because you've talked about strategy and how strategy needs to change. You say that, you're almost giving up hope for 2023, but you also say that all hope is not lost. Professor Paramalam, I wonder if you share Mrs. Eniobi's thoughts on that, on 2023. Are you happy with the number of women we see on the ballot, or should I say on the ballot? Roughly 1,000 from about 10,000 slots available. And what sort of strategy should we be changing if we're not happy?
Well, once again, good morning, and I hope you can hear me this time, and a very Merry Christmas to you. Can you hear me? Excellent. Okay. So yes, I certainly share Ene's perspective, indeed, and I would like to set her perspective of what she shared in global context. Nigeria ranks 183 among 193 countries surveyed by the Interparliamentary Union in terms of women's representation in parliament. That is right at the bottom. And when you come down to sub-Saharan Africa, Nigeria is in the bottom 4 countries in terms of female representation in parliament. And that just shows you how bad it is, setting what she said in global context. Now, I also agree with her that 2023 is virtually lost. However, I would say that we still have the opportunity, and which should be a strategy, of strengthening, boosting the capacity, or the governance capacity, the leadership capacity of the few women who are already there in parliament and already hold different elective and appointive posts across the nation, from local government right up to federal level. And I think in planning towards 2027, we must begin at the grassroots. We often start, at the top-down approach. But I think we need to begin to train women, help women, assist women in constituency building, in building their constituencies right from the grassroots, right from the local government level. That's where our focus must be, so that we can build a groundswell, a critical mass of women supporters as well as aspirants and candidates who can, move forward to take leadership. But then we also have to look at systemic and structural issues. Very often we just focus on the women. Are they coming out? What is the nature of their participation? We need to look at some of the structural issues, such as harmful traditional practices, such as gender-based culture bias, things that inhibit women even in their psychology to make them, not even want to come out. We have to also deal with things like gender-based violence, which is a major structural issue affecting women's, whether their desire to come out or their ability to contest, in a level playing field. We also have to look at laws. Look at the electoral system, for instance. It does not favor proportional representation, either ethnic proportion or religious proportion or gender proportion. So we need to look at our electoral laws. We need to move away from a first past the post system. We need to move to a more proportional system that favors, promoting the rights of women, young people, ethno-religious minorities in places of leadership. This will facilitate inclusion, and I think it will go a long way in strengthening women's resolve and their capacity to come out and contest for elections.
Well, one of the things that Mrs. Obi said is the fact that we need to support the women who have now come out. And I imagine as women's votes alone will not be able to, make them win. They're not going to be representing women alone, will they? They will be there in that position for men, women, and children. They'll be representing all of the constituency which they're supposed to be representing. But we're asking now that more women support female candidates. Should this be whether or not they're happy with the kind of candidate that has emerged?
That's a tough one, and it's a question that has been up for debate. Recently, we had a third women's national conference on this particular issue. And of course, the camp was divided between just vote for women because they are there, we need the numbers, and those who believe that, look, we need quality, we need competence, we need to vote for people who can actually deliver the goods. Now, my sister Ene, she favors, just putting women there because we really do need the numbers. And I sympathize with that position because honestly, the numbers right now are deplorable, with 8.2% in the Senate and 9.2% in the House of Representatives in terms of candidates that are aspiring to 2023. You can see that is quite bad. On the other hand, though, we don't want a situation where we reinvent the kind of politics that the men have promoted, which is largely a politics of incompetence. We do need people who can deliver on governance, who can deliver on leadership. Nigerians have suffered long enough from, bad leadership at different levels. And so we need to ensure that the women who get into positions of authority are women who can deliver the goods, not just for women, but for all Nigerians. And so I probably would think that we need to do much more on the issue of building women's leadership and governance capabilities at all levels, in all contexts. So yes, vote for women, but let us promote women who can actually deliver the goods.
Indeed. Let me take this to Madam Obi then, because I don't know if a lot of people know this, but as a female presidential candidate in the running out of the 18 of them, and I imagine that a lot of people, even women, do not know this. So I'd like you to speak to that point, because if there's meant to be a lot of support for any candidate, especially from women who, according to figures, make up about maybe 60% of the voting population at least, it should go to that female candidate naturally. But that's not the case. And that would be because a lot of people have freedom of choice. Freedom of association. They choose to associate with whichever party they want to associate with. So maybe a two-pronged question. Do you expect that woman to get a lot of support, especially for the women folk, and also in pushing for these rights for women, especially the affirmative action, where we have a gender policy, but it's really just a policy? How do we draw the line between now infringing on people's rights, which they would express naturally for any candidate, and ensuring that women get the appropriate representation?
Thank you very much for the question. When we are looking at the issues of gender representation, we are looking at, even the Constitution of Nigeria. And one of the things that we're told at the National Assembly is that the Constitution says no discrimination. That there is no discrimination against women in terms of, they are contesting positions, they are picking up the tickets and so on. In the last primaries, I got calls from quite a number of women who were not allowed to even pick up the tickets, even when they have the money. And so we need to look at the kind of bullying that we're having on women, the issue, not just a kind of intimidation that is happening. Some of them were going for the Senate seat, and they did not allow them to enter the offices to collect the forms. And these are realities. So some of them is sexual, harassment and intimidation, gender-based violence. A lot of them have encountered violence. If I tell you the rot of the kind of violence that they suffered, it's one for you to look at. We still have the case of, Salome, of Kogi State, the women leader for, one of the parties. Her house was burned down, and they surrounded the place and ensured that she died in the fire. And up till now, we're having lip service to the prosecution. How can you have a crowd surrounding a home and nobody? Those people who were judged mentioned that they were sent. Have they been proven? And so the kind of sanctions and the lip service, how can you do that for a woman? She's only a woman leader. She's not even occupying anything that threatens anybody. So why is she a threat? The case of Kara Namoda, Kara local government, is still here. Victoria Chintex, a woman leader for Labour Party in that local government, was shot, and her husband was also shot. And so these are cases, there are so many cases of gender-based violence. When they are campaigning, they set them up and even remove everything they are wearing on their bodies and so on and so forth to ensure that they don't come back, and some of the team admitted to them. You see, when we are looking at the gender bills, one of the contests is like, how can you have 8 women in the Senate, for example? And so all of the committees, who is representing what? I always stress, and I repeat, the quality of decisions that come out of any boardroom depends on who is in the boardroom making those decisions. Representation is very important. You cannot stand on this, you cannot be in the shoes of those who are feeling the pains of what they have. How many times, for example, do men use the hospitals? How many times do they use it? How many times do women use the hospitals? Nigeria is at the 5 from the bottom in the world on maternal mortality. So even through this Christmas, so many women have lost their lives on the maternity death road. It's to continue the production, to replace the workforce for the world. Why should we go that way?
It's a great thing that you've highlighted, especially the plight of women who have lost their lives. I mean, the case of Salome, the PDP woman leader in Kogi State, and also Victoria Chintex, the Labour Party woman leader who was murdered recently in Kaduna. These cases are really, really, cases in point that really point to some of the challenges that women really face. But for those who are currently in the race right now, who have, will I say, against all odds, they are in the race, they have been able to get their party's ticket, what would you say to them? And maybe some of them are even about to give up, because of the challenges. What would you say to them to keep them going, and what will be your final word to Nigerians?
Okay, mine is that, whatever you're doing, the fact that the women step out bold, no woman just gets up and go and pick up a ticket. They have gone through certain level. And I feel for their boldness alone, like somebody told me in the university, for you stepping out to contest for Students' Union presidency, you have my vote. And so we should work with them. Let many of them go out and make their mistakes. So I believe that if any woman, I was having doubts about it until I met a Finnish woman, a Finnish ambassador then for the country that I was at the time. And the woman says, what we started in doing in terms of equality, if you see any woman on the ballot box, vote for her. We don't ask questions, we just vote, because it takes a bold woman and a courageous woman to go into the ballot box. And so I think for me, for Nigerians, I ask that you vote. I was asked whether, what to do if I had, a woman presidency. We need to link up more to sustain their capacity. But if you want to look at the survey that is going on, where is a woman, where is the awareness on who she is, and all of that is still low, and people don't see what happens at those areas. But some women are going in for gubernatorial, which is for the first time. We might be lucky to have the first female, governors, and I think this is one of the things that we should be looking at. I want to encourage everybody to go out, but we also say, as the country and even the president, that he has a role for Nigerian women in terms of representation, because you have elective and you also have selection, in terms of appointment. They are not appointing women. How many women are they appointing to, represent women in Nigeria?
So there's also that pressure as well. Yeah. I mean, whilst it is that we should be looking to get more women in office, are we applying enough pressure on, political leaders who are in executive positions to, ensure that they increase the number of women appointees in position? I want you to quickly, comment on that as you also give your last word to women who are currently in the race and could be facing one challenge or another. That's for you, Professor Paramalam.
Thank you very much. It's a very important question. We must also remember that there is a national gender policy in place. That gender policy is an official statement of intent, which means that government is duty-bound to have at least 35% of women in elective and appointed posts. Successive governments have not held their side of the bargain with Nigerian women. In other words, they have violated their social contract with Nigerian women. The social contract is that no matter what, in any position, there should be no less than 35% of women. And so I would agree with my sister Ene in saying that don't discriminate against a candidate simply because that person is a woman. Give women their fair chance of making sure that they are represented. There are so many problems that women have, ranging from gender-based violence to feminization of poverty to underemployment and unemployment, that the men are not addressing. And so women remain pseudo-citizens, second-class citizens in a country simply because they are not fairly represented. In terms of pressure on government, recently Nigerian women took to the streets, went to the National Assembly, and they set up camp there saying that enough is enough. And I don't think that they were given enough hearing. I don't think our voices were really heard as much as they should be, because it's actually unconstitutional to have less than 35% women represented in any elective or appointive setup. It's unconstitutional. It's a violation of women's rights. It's also a matter of injustice as well as lack of inclusion. So I will say in my final word that both government and the people are duty-bound to ensure that there is inclusiveness, there is unity in diversity, there is representation for all Nigerians, and that nobody should be left behind. And we need to build back better in 2023, 2027 by ensuring that more women are on the ballot, more women are there in governance. Thank you.
It's a fine place to leave it. Professor Funmi Paramalam, thank you so much for your thoughts this beautiful Boxing Day morning. She's the Director of Studies at the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies in Kuru. Thank you so much for adding your voice to it. And to you, Ma'am NLB, thank you so much for coming to our studios this morning. She is the Country Director, Action Aid, and also the convener of the Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room. We'll take a break at this point, and we'll be back shortly. Maybe this time around we'll be able to discuss something less serious and let our head down. Who knows? Stay with us.